It's nice to be back. Thank you. A few weeks ago, I received a text from a friend. Have you seen this? She says. She just read a blog post online. It was titled, "My First AI Build, the Esther Perel Therapy Bot." Apparently, a guy had broken up with his girlfriend, was filled with regret, questioning himself and having difficulty understanding where he'd gone wrong. During this period, he had been listening to my podcast, Where Should We Begin?, and thought that, in his words, I would be the perfect person to help him gain clarity. Unfortunately, I wasn't available. So, he decided to recreate me in 3 weeks. And now, from what I hear, he texts with me regularly. As I'm getting older, I've been thinking a lot about mortality, but I didn't imagine immortality to appear in the form of a machine. To be clear, I had nothing to do with the creation of AI Esther, nor with any of the others that have been created in the weeks following. Part of me was flattered. Part of me felt plagiarized. Another part of me was deeply concerned about the clinical and ethical implications. Mostly, however, I was fascinated. This AI Esther, is she better than me? Her creator reported that she was. She was pure, with no preconceived notions, no risks of being distracted by something that happened to her in a previous session or in her personal life. She was knowledgeable with instant access to her entire corpus of work or research, unlike the real me who can be forgetful. And she was always available. She could speak with him at any time of the day or night, and if he wanted to interrupt, take a pause, he could come back anytime as he wished. Surprisingly, though, she had trouble remembering personal details about her own life, like her childhood. Go figure. AI Esther was trained on episodes of my podcast, so I want to share with you some of the source material. But before I share a clip, I challenge you to consider this. How would AI Esther handle these intimate impasses? Filled with love that is layered with nuance, ambiguity, and contradictions. I invite you to close your eyes, because when you listen attentively, you see yourselves more. Okay, so two people meet online with the stated purpose of just having light fun.
Yes.
Yes.
And some good recreational sex.
Yes.
Yes.
And then,
watching her fall in love with someone else was about the most painful thing that I've experienced. And I don't want to do that again.
My history with a lot of sexual trauma, I'd done a lot of work to find healing so that when I did come to a place where I was ready to say yes to a man, I would feel like my idea of sexuality and sensuality was restored.
This is the first straight person I've ever been with, and it's weird because it feels disingenuous to call myself gay when I'm with a cis straight guy.
Hi Esther, I'm pushing 40, and to this day I've never had a relationship that's gone beyond 4 or 5 months.
I'm wondering if I'm being gaslit by my partner. He says that I'm overly boundaried, I'm overly sensitive. I just have no idea if I'm basically a bad person, because that's what it sounds like.
I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to live my own life. even that decision was co-opted by my parents. You know, my dad gave me a call and he was like, man, I'm really impressed that you went off and did your own thing. You know, when I was young, I went off and I did my own thing. You're just like me.
And how does that land on you?
It's like being choked.
I guess there's a lot of questions that come with it. Do you need me to watch the kids while you go with the other guys?
She still struggles with saying that she enjoys having sex with me. Like, I'm not attracted to you. I don't enjoy having sex with you. And I'm like, well, you're faking really good then.
I love you so much.
Don't lie to me anymore.
I'm not gonna lie to you anymore. If this has taught us anything, I'm fucking done lying. I got some digging to do.
Genuine intimacy lives side by side with closeness and distance, care and aggression, unmet needs and unconscious longings, trust and betrayal, ruptures and repair, transgressions, intergenerational trauma and loss, love and the fears that we bring to love. None of the relationship dilemmas that you heard have easy or discrete binary answers. In fact, much of life's challenges are not problems we solve. They are paradoxes that we manage. And whether it's a person that you love or a job that, particularly in the last 48 hours, is on the line. For those of you who don't know me, I am Esther Perel. I'm a psychotherapist, I'm an author, a podcast host, a mother, a partner, and a human person. I've spent nearly 40 years studying relationships with people from all over the world. My work explores the intricacies of relationships, romantic, familial, friendships, and work relationships, the nature of erotic desire, monogamy and its discontents, infidelity, and the proliferation of diverse relational arrangements, situationships, living apart together, polyamory, platonic co-parenting, and more. Each of these arrangements necessitates a different definition of intimacy. And all of these are shaped by how technology is affecting and changing human behavior. For the last few years, I've been studying the convergence of mental health, therapy, and relationships with consumer technologies. What does it mean when we are looking for a soulmate on an app? Partaking in the frenzy of romantic consumerism, unable to commit to the good for fear of missing out on the perfect. I've been thinking a lot about modern loneliness, which masks itself as hyperconnectivity. Modern loneliness, which masks itself as hyperconnectivity. How can we have 1,000 virtual friends and then no one to ask to feed our cat? How can we develop deep bonds with our coworkers on Slack or see them in their homes on Zoom without ever meeting them in real life? And how we think that we know the lives of others because of what they post, but how we truly have no idea. We live in a world of curated, filtered imagery that puts us in a constant state of social comparison. And self-esteem has become contingent on performance. Performance that is measured by engagement metrics. Did I get enough likes? Is the rise of therapy speak on apps like TikTok helping us to address this, I ask? Or is it simply creating a cacophony of self-diagnosis? We know that online communities can be extremely gratifying. They give us education, belonging, friendships, connections, and a lot to laugh at. But we also know that youngsters today are online all day, And research consistently shows it's creating unprecedented anxiety and depression, particularly for girls, and isolation and decreased social skills for boys. And we wonder why there is a growing mental health crisis? Or for that matter, I've been thinking, are we really in a mental health crisis? Or are we having adaptive responses to the crisis and the malaise of the societies and the world that we live in? Most likely, it is both. These are just some of the questions that I have been preoccupied with in recent years. But my robo counterpart, AI Esther, has me asking a whole new set of questions. To what extent can the AI replicate the intimate experiences of a human confidant? What is lost, and what might be supercharged? What does it mean when we soothe ourselves primarily with our devices? And at what point, what is the point when we begin to make do with a simulation of reality? We have been talking a lot about artificial intelligence, but what about the other AI? To what extent is artificial intelligence a conduit for artificial intimacy? Let me explain. When I read AI Esther's answers, I was impressed. It did sound like me at times, but it also felt like a caricature. It said all the right words, stuck to its script. No matter what I asked, though, it gave me a generic answer, like a fortune-telling machine at a carnival. And yet, her creator reported that after texting with AI Esther, he had, quote, the most clarity he'd ever had about his relationships. In quote, my experience was magical. Todd Essick and Sherry Turkle have written extensively on artificial intimacy when it comes to telehealth. Their main point: when people get mental health treatment online, they often are as satisfied as they would be if it was in person. But quantitatively, the results are not nearly as good. What does this mean? Patients were satisfied because they lowered their expectations for empathy, for intimacy, to match what the technology could provide. They received less effective care, but they didn't recognize the difference. I admire the creator of AI Esther, but I do have to tell him, just because he felt satisfied doesn't mean it was good, or even real psychotherapy. Reminds me of how long people have bad sex until the time they finally have good sex. Then they know the difference. And just because we feel that we are having intimate experiences through our devices doesn't always mean that it is the real thing. Honestly, I want to tell you, artificial intimacy with a bot is not actually what concerns me. What concerns me is how digitally facilitated connections are now lowering our expectations of intimacy between humans. In the real world, people are not always instantly available on demand to soothe you, pure and without their own histories, nor are relationships ever a one-way street. We did this before with junk food, by the way. The promise of repeatable, always available, shelf-stable food was irresistible, and only now are we coming to terms with the nutrition that we traded away and the consequences for our physical health. Why should mental health and relational health be any different? How are you doing? He's super quiet. I don't know which way this means. But this isn't new, right? We've spent the last decade shifting our lives into their virtual expressions, and thank goodness we did. 3 years ago, when COVID-19 set in, connecting online got many of us through the worst of it. 40-person email threads, online yoga groups, sending each other memes, Zoom Thanksgivings, and most importantly, virtual funerals. Don't forget that in the beginning, saying goodbye to a dying loved one happened almost exclusively by a nurse holding up an iPad or an iPhone. I see it when I'm saying it. We would have been lost without our technologies, of course, and our medical providers. As a psychotherapist who started in the isolation of my office, I have benefited greatly from technology. But I probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the podcast, which many of you have been listening to, if it wasn't for the newsletters or the exchanges that we have on social media, mostly from the comforts of your phone. But from the comfort of my phone, it's like I have entered a form of assisted living. My calendar pings me with my next meeting. Waze tells me which road to take. Spotify tells me what to listen to next. Netflix tells me what to watch. If I was single, I'd probably be on a dating app. But let's be honest, I'm still late. I always get massively lost. My husband and I now talk the entire evening about which movie to watch, but we end up watching none. Because there's too much choice. And the dating apps, even 65% of relationships, now start online, but it's also the number one thing that people complain to me about. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy my inconveniences being removed, but at the same time, being uncomfortable, doing things that you end up not enjoying, being afraid, and taking risks are some of the ways that we learn who we are and who we are not. The experimentations and the failures are essential to the development of our identity. And you would think that having all these recommendations in the palm of our hand would make us more confident, less anxious, more prepared for what we call in French l'inconnu, the unknowable. But what if they are eroding us? When we take the risks away, we take away the learning opportunities. We create rigidity in a world that demands flexibility. We develop a constant need for certainty when facing uncertainty has always been a fact of life, something that many of you in this room know very well. And as my colleague Theodora Pavkovic explains, it's our ability to act freely upon the uncertainty and then see the ripples of our own actions that lets us know that we are alive. Our increasingly predictive technologies, while they have solved many of life's biggest inconveniences, are also making us unprepared and unable to tolerate the inevitable unpredictabilities of human nature, love, and life. They promise to eliminate friction, to smooth the rough edges. We've all been stroking these phones. We know what I'm talking about. But I do fear that we may be smoothing life's rough edges to the point of flatness. Trust me, I'm a sex and relationship therapist. Friction is a potent ingredient of eroticism. The famous sexologist Jack Morin has a fantastic erotic equation, and it says, attraction plus obstacle equals desire. So what is this flatness doing to the erotic dimension of our lives? And when I say eroticism, I don't just mean sex per se. I'm using the word erotic in the mystical sense of the word. Aliveness, vibrancy, vitality, pleasure, imagination, the part of life that thrives on happenstance and spontaneity. But these days we're working so hard to squelch happenstance in favor of excessive predictability. My point is this. De-risking and automating life is turning intimacy into a flat, commercialized process that eliminates eros. And it simultaneously is also atrophying the social muscles that we need to have successful relationships. Can we get the lights up for a moment, please? In the room. Not on me, on you. House lights, yes, okay. I want to just ask you a few questions, and I'm going to ask you to stand up if the answer applies to you, or to indicate in whatever way is comfortable and available to you. Would you please stand up if you are currently in a relationship? Wow. All right. Thank you. You may sit. And would you please stand up if you would like to be in a relationship? Yes. Stake it, claim it. All right. Thank you. And now, may I ask you, if you are in a relationship, would you like to be out of the relationship you're in, at least on occasion? Stand up. Let's be honest. Honesty, a good feature of intimacy. But I want to ask you the next one. And let's stand up one more time, but follow me. If you spend your whole day on a computer, typing, emailing, Zooming, and then waiting for the moment when you can finally get off screen, stand up. All right. And then stay standing, or not. You'll see. If after you go home, you find that you have no energy for anything else but watching TV, and then stand up or stay standing if you're scrolling your phone while you're watching the TV. A few more joined us. And then, to crown the whole thing, stay standing if there's often someone sitting right next to you doing the same thing. So people, tell me something. Are you surprised why we're having less sex? I mean, I'm not going to make you stand for this one, but it goes on. No, there's worse. We'll do it with our hands this time. How often do we look up at a dinner table to find everyone staring at their phones, and then realize that we're doing the exact same thing? Yeah. And then, more importantly, and this one is the more one, the more painful one, how common has it become that we talk to somebody about something that's important, personal, vulnerable, and then as we talk to them, we hear, and you know that they're half listening. There's that gap that tells you, I'm here, but I'm not present. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. We have come to accept distracted attention as enough, and it's not. Over the last decades or so, these situations in which people are supposedly with each other but not present, this is artificial intimacy. And artificial intimacy is full of disrupted connections that have become normalized and socially acceptable. They are associated with a particular feeling that is called ambiguous loss. Now, ambiguous loss was a term that was coined by a colleague, Pauline Boss, in a very different context. But what she was referring to was when you are with someone who is still physically present, but they are emotionally or psychologically gone, like dementia. Or when you are in a situation with someone who is very much physically and emotionally present, but they are physically absent, like deployment or disappearance. Leave the lights on, please. We are going to be talking together a lot. When I described this situation of ambiguous loss, how many of you are familiar with this? Raise your hand. Yes. Okay. Thank you. But instead of telling you, I want to show you how wired we are for connection, how intimacy is essential for our survival. And this is true from the moment that we are born. So I want to use a classic from developmental psychology, research that was done in the 70s by psychologist and developmental researcher Ed Tronick. It's called the still face experiment. Some of you may know it. He's kindly giving me permission to share it with you, even though I'm taking it completely out of context. Let's watch.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, come on, why aren't we doing this? Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
We're talking about a parent and their baby, and it's utterly heartbreaking, no? Don't you feel this when you're watching this? It's like none of us would ever consciously do this. And yet, we're doing it to each other all the time with our screens. When I think of Tronick's still face experiment, I immediately think about the experience of modern dating. Dating apps that give us a hedonic treadmill of options. Every time we get a match, we flood with dopamine and adrenaline. We reach out, maybe they respond. We go back and forth, flirting, like the mother and the baby, playing, planning to meet up. It's the goo-goo gaga phase. And then, suddenly, they're gone. Ghosting. Maybe they leave us with a few breadcrumbs of hope. Maybe they literally ghost us altogether. Intimacy avoidance is a direct result of the rise of artificial intimacy. And so we start to collapse just like the baby. We try to self-soothe. We're angry, upset, rejected, confused, desperate. And we may go through this sometimes, this very same cycle, with 20 different people before we get to the actual first date with someone. So, if we get to the first date, it seems that we've become quite incapable of tolerating any uncertainties, and we're looking for perfection. Any imperfections that may show up that don't match our checklist. The checklist. How many of you have gone on a date with the checklist? Looks like a job interview. You know, they must be taller than me, with a great job, a full hairline if you're a guy, a perfect hourglass if you're a woman, a face like a beauty filter. Their political opinions must align with ours or else they're an idiot. They must be well-read. And God forbid they commit a faux pas, because we immediately get that ick factor that shuts the whole thing down, probably without ever telling them the real reason why. And then we get back on the hedonic treadmill of modern dating, to the point where one guy told me recently, a young man tells me, that he spends more time trying to figure out how to crack the algorithm of his dating apps so that he gets better options than he does actually dating people. In reality, he's not trying to get better options. He's trying to understand why the algorithm thinks that he's not good enough. And this relentless focus on optimization has actually optimized the way our ability to be present, to be surprised, and to be available to each other, to Eros itself. A unique part of intimacy is that when we allow ourselves to truly meet another, we also meet new parts of who we are. And the checklist towards our ability to do that. I can tell you from my own experience, if I had followed this map, the kind of checklist dating as it is today, I would never have ended up with my husband. Many of his qualities are probably the opposite of what I would be looking on my checklist. I never met a guy who only spoke one language, never met someone who had never been abroad. I mean, it was like, I knew it when I met him, but I was up for the discovery. And for that matter, many of his current habits are still the opposite of what I wish for. And he probably would say the same about me. By the way, it's been 40 years. But if you clap, you have fallen into the false premise that longevity is a marker of success. True intimacy, as I see it, is a maelstrom of contradictory emotions. It's love and hate, attraction and repulsion, excitement and boredom. It's often called relational ambivalence. It's all of you who said earlier that on occasion you would like to be out of the relationship that you are in. And the next day are so grateful to be there. Relational ambivalence is what we experience when we are locked in a situation with no easy answers and need to hold both parts of a dilemma. This is what happens mostly in a therapist's office, especially as a couples therapist and a family therapist. So I want to play you a clip from a couple in Ukraine that I saw a few months ago. The war breaks out. They are separated. They think it's going to be a 2-week story, right? It's always a 2-week story. And he stays there because he has to. He may be drafted, and he has the 18-year-old who may be drafted too. She leaves with the 16-year-old. She's in Western Europe. They have a moral dilemma. Artificial intelligence doesn't always know what to do with moral dilemmas. She says, we save ourselves first. Come join me. He says, God gave me an order. I have to defend my nation. There is no right, easy answer for these types of situations. Let's listen.
the first conversation was really tough, because when I asked, like, so Andrew, how are you? And he said, I don't even know, because I'm afraid to ask myself this question, because I'm afraid there is so much pain there that I don't even want to look there. On the other hand, from what you have just shared, which is absolutely true, I was kind of feeling I was feeling lonely. I was feeling not loved. There is like my man of my life is not besides me. I don't hear anymore so many compliments. That is my need. Lifestyle has changed so drastically. We were kind of afraid to approach each other. I was afraid to hurt him, because I knew that he's going through air alerts 5 times per day. He has to go to bunker to save himself and our son. And I need just to be loved. I want to be loved. I want to hear compliments. I want to be the same woman for him.
My first reaction was, what are you talking about? About compliment? We have war. We have difficult situation. I try to do something helpful for my country, for my family, for compliment. But then I just thinking about it, because I think she just go through difficult time now. She has needs. It's like if my wife need good words, like compliments, say, you're so beautiful today, I love you so much, and it's very important for her.
Andrew, it's not
Yes.
just important for her. It's not just important
Why?
for her. Because you too feel this. But if you allow yourself to connect with those feelings, it's even more scary. If you remember how much you love her and how much you miss her and how much you would love to touch her and how much you would like her to hold you, you will connect with a different set of feelings. At this point, you respond from the heroic position of I'm fighting for my country, and it's crucial.
Yeah.
But there is also, I'm deeply connected to you and I don't want to lose you. And so if you make it that she wants to be loved while you are expressing the love of the nation, you're missing the point for yourself, not for her, for yourself.
Relationships exist in a context. The most alarming experience I had reading AI Esther's answers was how it speaks of relationships, but divorces them from their context. AI Esther doesn't have a personal experience or feelings when she sits with this couple. I, however, am filled with emotion. I'm remembering when my parents fled their country, when they said goodbye to their parents for the last time, when they hoped to see them for 5 years while they were in concentration camps. I have loads of feelings. I'm in tears as I hear this couple. AI Esther can give analysis on what it's trained for, but it doesn't have personal beliefs, and I do. In trying to reduce complex issues to zeros and ones, we've become more black and white in our thinking, and especially in the way that we are approaching relationships. But the issues that you would be coming to me with, many of them, would require technicolor strategies. Should we stop sleeping with other people? Should we start sleeping with other people? Together or apart? When should we have another child? Should I freeze my eggs? Should we unplug grandma? Should we live closer to our family or set out on our own? When the relationship is too good to leave and too bad to stay, shall I stay or shall I go? I suggest that we stop treating these dilemmas like technical problems that have clear-cut solutions. Ron Heifetz calls them adaptive challenges. They require changes in values and in perspective. And most importantly, it's the ability to hold both. It's not we should save ourselves, we should save our nation, as if they are two incompatible things, and as if he doesn't care about the self and she doesn't care about the nation. That's called polarizing. Many of us are currently living with heavy questions that don't have right and wrong answers. Whatever decision you make will come with consequences that you must carry. Every choice carries grief for the option that we didn't choose. And the siren song of our screens is the false promise that we can make choices without experiencing this grief. Our current focus on smooth and polished, free of large obstacles and minor discomforts is making many of our lives easier, no doubt. But these attempts to remove pain, inconvenience, and discomfort are leaving us ill-prepared for the messiness, the bumps, the smells, the decays, the everyday inconveniences, the SVP of living in close proximity with another human. Basically, the less shiny aspects, dare I say. So, I want to focus on the shinier side for a moment. Intimacy is embodied. AI Esther is not. But I am, and you are. You have known intimacy since you were in the womb. For 1.5 years when you were little, before you uttered your first word, you mastered the language of the body. You knew the language of intimacy. Touch, smell, which is our memory, sight, eye contact, taste, sound. Do not forget, you are alive. Thank you. So, we're not done. Now we're going to talk together. We're going to have questions and answers. There's mics. You can come and ask. But here's the thing, people. A question is a question. It is not a statement with a question mark. And I want us to have a chance to hear many. So can we have more light in the house for a moment? And let's talk. Yes. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Bonjour Estelle. My name is Kanika, and I'm a sexologist from Montreal. I agree.
See, we start with the hot topic. What else matters?
So I obviously agree with everything that you say, but I wonder, I work with individuals, and how do you work on something microscopic in an office one-on-one when it's so much bigger than this? It's so much bigger than working with the individual. It's something macro-social. So I feel like, what would you say when this is, what's the solution? How would I work this in one-on-one?
Great. I'm going to take a few. Can I have a pen? I see I have no pen. I need a pen. Anybody? You still have pens? Thank you. All right. Go. Let's go. I hear you. Guys, go ahead. I'm going to remember them. Don't worry. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I was just curious if you're going to allow AI Esther to continue to exist.
I have a fantasy. I'll tell you.
So Esther, I think no one would argue that the real Esther is better than an AI Esther. But you write books. And when you write a book and you give it out, the book is not interacting. It doesn't know the context when that person's reading it. So wouldn't the AI Esther be better than a book?
Better than a book. Yes?
So first, I want to say that I admire you. Thank you for your content. I have a question.
What's your name?
Juan.
Juan, hola.
Hola. Nice to meet you. What do you do to recover intimacy when you have lost it?
Between who, what for, why, what happened? Juan,
I was
a relationship takes place in a context.
Okay.
There's a story, there's a plot. Without it, it's generic fortune teller machine talk. That's exactly the point.
Okay, I'll try to elaborate. So you was talking about couples that are missing a relationship because they are on their phones, things like that. So if you wanted to go back to natural intimacy, I know you can tell me that I can just put off my phone, but I don't know if there's something else. Thank you.
I got one for you. Okay, 2 more, and then we'll, very quick.
Okay, it's so nice to meet you. I'm also a fan of your work. So I'm in a relationship where I'm very much like the opposite of my partner, and I'm wondering, how do our brains hold paradox when two things can be true simultaneously, which is such a through line of your work? It's really hard to do. Thank you.
Yes, great questions. Yeah.
Hi, Esther. I'm Sarah. Don't you think that AI Esther could be a first good step to overcome the fear of going to therapy and be used for psychoeducation?
You think that?
Yes, but I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, no, it's just that it's a rhetorical question. All right, let me just take these first, and then, because I'm looking at our time as well. When you sit with a person in a room, the art is actually not just, you don't want light so you can all see each other. Turn on the lights, so I see you too. I always think in 4 levels, basically. Level 1 is the societal level. It's the large systems, it's the historical, it's race, culture, religion, gender, class. It's the big pieces that give context to a person. Then there is the family story. What's the family story, and what is the legacy of the family story in the life of this individual? Then there is the interpersonal. What's the relationship issues between this person and the people around them? And then there is the intrapersonal. So even though you sit with an individual, I think systemically, like many of you think systemically, contextually and systemically. What I do may be a very one-on-one intervention, but the implications are much bigger, and the choices of my interventions are informed by all 4 levels. Is AI Esther going to continue? I would love to have a session where AI Esther does her interventions, and then I do mine. And then we can discuss it. I'm in many peer supervision groups. This would be a peer supervision group between me and my bot. It would be very interesting, you know, because so much of what I do is going off script, not staying on script. So much of what I do is intuitive. It's a trial and error. It's saying something, then watching your face, then seeing if there's a vagal nerve little tweak here, something that tells me, yes, you're on track, she's biting, it fits, versus no, I can't take this in. It's too painful, too hard, too far from what I'm experiencing. It's micro tracking that you do. That's a very different set of skills. Are the skills of the AI useful? Yes. Is it a good start? Is it helpful with skills to help you breathe, to help you remember, to do cognitive behavioral stuff that helps you slow down, etc.? Absolutely. And I'm sure that the bot will be very useful in telling grandma that it's time to take her pills. I'm not so sure it will help her have a conversation about how she managed her relationship with her estranged children and what was the meaning of her life as she comes to the end. It's 2 separate issues. When intimacy is gone, you see, imagine you are actually sitting on that phone in the home with somebody with whom you feel this complete disconnect or slight disconnect, and you're doing exactly what we described, and suddenly they get a text. I'm sitting here next to you, and I'm wondering, when's the last time we had a real conversation? I miss it. I've been meaning so many times to close it and to finally have a real chat. And every time I avoid it because I don't think it's good is going to come out of it, because I always am afraid it's going to derail. But still, I miss it. I'm thinking, what would happen if we both put our phone down now and if you actually looked into each other's eye and remembered why we ever chose each other in the first place? Because I can't be the only one who feels lonely here and disconnected and dried up. And I'm sure that you must have some of these feelings too. And this would not be a conversation about who's at fault and who's responsible and who's to blame for the rut in which we are. I just want us to climb out of it. Are you game? Something like that. Something like that. So a text like this. I'm sure there are many writers in the room. It's variations of that. It's one in which you become reflective rather than reactive. In one in which you become inviting, in which you express your longings rather than your resentments. It's all of that. How do you hold opposites? The best way to hold opposites is to actually never believe that you are right. That in itself, a lot of the questions that we were asking, right? Should we leave? Should we stay? Should we have another kid? Should we unplug? These dilemmas, what I mean by this, it's about holding the polarity. What it means is, so often in a couple, one person says, we should go, or we should have another kid, for example. Let's just use that one. Is that a good use example? We should have another kid. We should move, we should go, whatever we should. And the other one says, no, we shouldn't. And they position themselves as if the one who says yay only thinks of yay, and the one who says nay, or says the other position, only inhabits the other side. The way you do the crossing is that if you were alone, you would have to hold both sides inside of you. A part of me feels this way, and a part of me feels that way. In a relationship, it becomes, I feel this way, you feel that way. We outsource to the partner the part of our dilemma that we don't like to hold. And that's polarization. Couples therapists are masters in polarization. As if the people who want free speech don't care about the vulnerability of the others. As if people who are pro-life don't care about, the people who are pro-abortion don't care about life. It's this kind of dualities. No. Imagine if I was alone, I'd have to hold them both. So with you, one of the best ways to hold is to actually take the position of the other person. You start talking about the aspects of the equation that the other one has been voicing. And then you will see how the extremities soften. I could speak along about that, but I think I've given you an idea. So, we have a few minutes. Go ahead. Yes. No, your mic is off.
Oh, it's off.
Take it, do like this.
Yeah, no, you're hearing me now.
Yes.
I'm such a huge fan. I'm Andre from Jamaica.
Hello.
All right, so I was wondering if you believe that the preponderance of artificial intimacy is contributing to what seems to be a straining racial relationships in the United States. And if you do believe that, in what ways is this AI actually contributing to that?
Wow. Your questions are incredible, but how can one answer this in 30 seconds? With integrity and some level of... Yes.
Hello, I'm Claudix from Peru. I've never gone to therapy and I feel I'm very ignorant about my feelings. And you were talking about intimacy in context of romance. I think the most important intimacy relationships I have is with my family and friends. Mm-hmm. And I was born before social media. Lately, and when you were talking about screens, I felt like my life is going, ooh, because I spend so much time on screens and not paying so much attention.
And the question is?
And my question is, do we have infinite intimacy to give to others? I don't want to ghost people, but there's so many people asking for my attention because of social media, I think.
I got it. Yes.
Hi, I'm Lara from Brazil.
This is the international crew.
How can we raise feminist boys in a society of so many scared men dealing with free women and I'm having a feeling that dating apps are not helping. Thank you.
All right, session 2 takes place. This is amazing. Yes, last one.
Hi, I'm Jose from Peru. You spoke of an increase in loneliness. I wanted to know if you think that will affect all groups the same, or if it will affect an age group particularly, or a gender. That's it.
That's a great question. You know what is nice when people ask you great questions is you know they listened. I can't tell you how much satisfaction that gives. You know, so the question about artificial intimacy and increase in lack of tolerance. I would put it like that. You asked specifically about racism, but I honestly think it would be disrespectful for me to just try to hop in an answer like that. What I do think, and this is even in the question that in the talk, when I was preparing this talk, I thought, if I question, it could so easily be seen that I'm saying it is not good. That's the risk of polarization, is that you can no longer have a conversation, a difficult conversation, that challenges your assumptions without being put into a camp. This happened throughout the COVID the whole time. I think that when you lose that ability for friction, for unknown, for unpredictability, for things not being exactly what you expect, for them not always feeling safe either, it does increase the need for people to primarily stay with their own groups. And in that sense, I think it increases discrimination, separation, and racism. That would be the entry point for me in connecting what I spoke about with your question, man from Jamaica, wherever you sit, because you didn't give me your name. Do we have infinite? Okay, so listen. If you ask me, do I have an infinite capital of intimacy and warm feelings for the thousands of people on social, then you haven't understood the function of social. If you had asked me, I don't have a partner, my connections come primarily with my family and my friends, I would have said love and commitment belong to many relationships. We in the West have often put it primarily on romantic relationships, but that's a mistake. It's reductionistic. We have love and we have commitment in friendships and in family ties, etc. If you tell me too many people ask too much of me, then I would say have your social media life and then have a small group of people who become the ones that really matter in your life, the ones you will call when you need somebody to go and pick up a prescription at the pharmacy. But if you say, I need intimacy for the relationships on social media, then we are mixing the metaphors. And by the way, I just wanted to make this clear. I answered some questions. I'm thinking out loud with you. I sound super confident, but I am sure of nothing. You know? I present like I know. I'm thinking with you. We're all thinking about these questions together. That's the definition of dilemmas, of qualitative questions, is that we don't just have an answer to spout. I wish I could speak about the feminist boys, but you should meet mine. And the question of loneliness, I will answer very briefly. It's this. I think when it's bad for the girls, it's worse for the boys. So I do think that there is a gender factor on the level of isolation and loneliness. It's the young and it's the old. The elderly, but that we've already known, we figured that out during the pandemic. But the young, that level of rise in loneliness actually is very dear to me. And with that, people, I have to say thank you and goodbye.